Just saying
Okay.
that when we start late, we
Yes.
reward the people who come late and penalize those who are on time. So I'd just like to welcome everybody, and of course thank everybody for coming here. It is Saturday afternoon late. At 6 o'clock, it's Saturday evening actually. So thank everybody for giving up of their time to come, for us to become stronger people, for us to learn something, for us to make ourselves the kind of consummate HR professionals, consummate people that the University of the West Indies is trying to put out. And of course, I really have to thank Dr. Rose Johnson for coming here and sharing of her expertise with the staff and students of the HRD program. Dr. Johnson is a senior lecturer in the Department of Sociology, Psychology, and Social Work. She's a clinical psychologist. She has been doing a series of workshops to help the staff and students of the University of the West Indies and elsewhere during this extraordinary time, a COVID pandemic. The well, we had one in 2007, but before that, it was 100 years ago that the world saw this kind of thing happen. So none of us is truly prepared, but we are trying to become better people by doing what we can. We've seen what the government has put out. We've seen what other people put out. We've listened to music. We've done what we can, but we have a professional here who is here to help us. We've heard that there are people who are having some challenges, and Dr. Johnson is here to help us with that. She is extremely well qualified, and her practice has embraced this in the last few weeks. She has done these workshops, and we're fortunate that she's doing one for us now. So I urge everybody to help me welcome Dr. Rose Johnson in our usual HRD fashion. All right. So, Doc, it's over to you.
Thank you, Olivine. Thank you, everyone. I may know some of you, but for the people who I'm just meeting, hi. I am not technologically savvy, so I am going to do this again. So this is, oh, no, it makes, no, I can see how I can navigate this. Are you seeing my slide, Ollie?
Yes, yes, I'm seeing it. Yes.
I'm sharing my screen. Good. All right. So when Olivine asked me to do this, I was thinking about, well, how can this be most helpful? And I've done a couple of these for different departments at the university since the pandemic. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just talk briefly, a general overview, and then talk more specifically to concerns that people might have. So, and do that more in a kind of Q&A. But what I'm going to talk about is just a frame to set a context for how we can manage whatever it is that life throws at us. And this pandemic is, I think, requires us to dig deep in terms of the resources that we bring to this so that we don't become overwhelmed. Now, not that I'm fishing for anything, but tomorrow I am 60. And I'm saying all of that to say, over the 60 years that I have been on this earth, it's only in the last maybe 10 or 15, and I've been a psychologist for a really long time, over about 30 years. It's only in the last maybe 15 that this has really sunk in. Whenever we are about to embark on anything, the way to ensure that we get results is that we need to begin with the end in mind. And so this is kind of where I'm going to start. So you took the time to join this webinar, and I am not sure what it is that you had to organize or reorganize to be here, but this is what I know about the mind. The mind will give you what it is that you request of it. And if you don't direct it in a very specific way, this is where it's going to go. It's going to go in default or stay in default. And the default for the mind is what is wrong or what could go wrong. And in this pandemic, we don't have to look very far to come up with what is wrong. And so part of the coping with this is to remember what we are still in control of and to execute on that. And so this is what I'm going to ask each of you to do. So you knew you were coming to hear somebody talk about coping with this pandemic. I decided to add thriving to it because I think that we can do more than cope even with it. And so you knew you were going to come and spend however long you're going to spend here. And so what I want you to do now is what is it? I'm calling it a lecture, but it's not a lecture, it's a talk. What is it that you would want to get from this? So in order to ensure that you get the results that you want, part of the directing of the mind is asking and answering the question. You're always beginning at the end because the mind needs a direction. If you don't give it a direction, it's going to get distracted by the things that come at us in life. So when this is over, what do you want to gain? You need to make it something very specific that you want to get, either for yourself or for others. And let me see if it's because I haven't. Okay. So, and I'm getting even more specific because words direct the focus. So the word, I'm trying to direct the mind by you telling it before we're even finished that this is going to be the most exceptional hour that you're going to spend. And so if your mind understands that, that's where it's going to put its focus. And that's how you're going to get the most out of it. Okay? So I hope that you were writing when I was talking. And so could anybody share with us, what is it that you wrote down? What do you want to get when this is finished?
What I would like to get is what I'd like to get is even more solid branding for the HRD unit as an innovative program.
Okay, all right.
Because I mean, it's not normal, I think, for programs to be looking about the mental well-being, the emotional and mental well-being of students in this kind of frontal way.
Got it. Okay, thanks, Ollie. Anybody else? One more. What is it that you would want to get from this?
Carol here.
Hi, Carol.
What is it that I like? I wrote down 3 things.
Okay.
I wrote down a calm spirit. I replaced want with need. What is it?
Okay.
A calm spirit, so level just, an inner calmness.
Okay.
To achieve my goal in completing this master's program, and just to let go, just to let go, not in a irresponsible way, but to just let go. I don't know if you've known this expression, just let go and let God.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
that's it. Yeah.
Okay, all right. And I hope the rest of you took the time to write something down, because that's what we have control over in this time are three things. We always have control over our thoughts. We always have control over our feelings. And we always have control over our behavior. That is all we control. And if we remember that and put our energies on those three things, then it doesn't matter what's going on in the environment, including COVID. You are gonna feel that there is something you can do about it, okay? Now, I'm gonna skip that because that doesn't work. And so the question now is, what has this pandemic caused? And the first thing that is important, I think all of us can agree on, is that it has thrown all of us into uncertainty. So this virus it's affecting everybody in very strange ways. Not only is it affecting everybody in strange ways, everything that we counted on, everything that we knew in terms of a routine has just gotten turned upside down. All of a sudden, we have to put our classes online. You have to learn online. We're not sure, is the internet gonna hold? Am I gonna be dropped? How will my examinations go? I mean, for those of you who have kids, it's not just that UWI has closed, regular school has closed. And now you have to figure out, what do we do with the children? How do I teach my children? We can't just pick up and go to the supermarket like we used to. The things that some of us would do to kind of unwind and relax, you can't go out anymore. You are confined in a space that you're not used to being confined in. And so all of this uncertainty now elicits and creates all sorts of emotions. And most of them are negative emotions. So fear is at an all-time high. Fear that then gets projected into the future becomes anxiety. And so, is my job safe? Is my job secure? How long will I get laid off? Will I be able to support my family? And so this one thing that has thrown everything upside down, all of us as human beings have an emotional response or reaction to it. Now, we are all designed as human beings to deal with short-term stress. So the body flips into fight or flight. When it does that, then all of the hormones that are going to help you to escape or fight gets pumped into the system. And so we can tolerate short-term stress, but if this stress is constant and chronic, then it begins to break down the body and create disease. Now, if you were stressed before COVID and COVID gets overlaid over the chronic stress that you had, then this just makes it worse. Okay, and so it's even more critical to come up with some ways of, well, how can I control my internal state. Because remember, what I was saying is there are three things we control: our thoughts, our feelings, and our behavior. So to deal with this is not to make adjustments necessarily in the environment. The best way to deal with this is from the inside out. And that's kind of what we're going to spend some time on, okay? Now, if all we're thinking about is the uncertainty and the fear and the worry, then what you're basically doing is that you're priming yourself to experience only those things in the environment. So part of turning this around is to become aware of what is it that I have been focusing on over I think it's in February when this became a thing for me. So what are you thinking about during the day? What do you go to bed thinking about? What do you wake up thinking about? And one of the things to understand is whatever you're thinking about is going to become your experience. And I just threw some examples of this in here to kind of illustrate a point. How did you prime yourself today with any of these experiences? What priming is it's a way to orient the mind in terms of a focus. So was there any time today that I thought that they're giving me too much work, or I have too much work, or I can't manage any of this, or this is too much? Or here's another prime. God, this is an opportunity for me to innovate and to expand and to find new ways of doing things. Whatever it is that you use to prime, it's important to know that this is going to capture your attention and focus. And as we're going to talk about later on, we only feel what we focus on, okay? And so if you're focused on the problems that have been created, if all you're doing is focusing on the problems that have been created by the pandemic, that's all you're going to feel. If you're focused on the problems and the opportunities, the amount of time you focus on the problems, that's what you're going to feel. The amount of time you focus on the opportunities, that's what you're going to feel. If you're focused on the opportunities, that's what you're going to feel, okay? And we'll talk some more about that later on. So what I want you to know is this: it all begins and ends in the mind. And for things to change for you, you have to change, not the environment. It all begins and ends in the mind. And for things to change, you have to change. And so let's talk about now, how are some ways that you could change? And if there's a question, you can ask me. If there's something you want me to repeat, you can let me know. Okay?
Giovanni is saying, but I think it's hard to focus on anything when the reality of what's going on hits you.
And we're going to talk about that. So could you hold that? And we're going to talk about how you can do that, even when the reality is the reality. So this is a little exercise for you guys. What do you see? The young woman or the old woman? And this, for the person who asked that question, it is demonstrating what the mind can do. Do you see a young woman or do you see an old woman? And you can type in the chat which one you see. What do you see, an old woman, or you can say it in your mind. What do you see, an old woman or a young woman? Anybody? What do you see?
A young woman?
Fine.
I saw both, but I saw the young woman first.
You saw both, and you saw the young woman first. Anybody else?
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
with
seeing
Debbie.
You're seeing one or both?
one.
Okay. And so the reason that I threw this in here is to help to provide a concrete example for what focus does. So when you're focused in a particular way, and using this picture as the example, when you focus one way, you can see a young woman whose profile is turned to the side. And you see her ears and all of that. When you're seeing the old woman, what was the ear of the young woman is the old woman's eye. And so what happens, so if you think of life as a canvas or a painting like this, depending on where you focus, you're going to have a particular experience. And for some of you who can see both the old woman and the young woman, what that is saying is that your mind is flexible so it can look at different possibilities. One of the things I also want to say is when you're seeing the young woman, you can't see the old woman. And when you're seeing the old woman, you can't see the young woman. So the mind has to drop one thing in order to focus on the other. And so the picture I'm trying to paint is this. It's kind of like when you get a new cell phone, in order for you to use it appropriately, you need to understand how it works. Because if you don't understand how it works, you might not even be able to turn it on so you can get the use of it. And so in order for you to understand the resources you currently have, you kind of have to understand the mind, which is what helps us to execute all of it. So understand that the mind can shift what you experience depending on where you put your focus. So that's kind of the idea behind it, all right? Here's another thing that I want you to know or to consider. Emotions are the fuel that get us through life, okay? So frustration, anger, resentment, depression, those are emotions. At the same time that joy and excitement and passion and contentment and laughter and playfulness, those are also emotions. The emotions of our lives are our life. And so it's important to understand that it doesn't matter what's going on. If the emotions of your life are frustration and anger and resentment, it won't matter what's going on externally. What you're going to experience is what your typical emotional state is. If the emotional state by which you live primarily is joy and laughter and contentment, that's how you're going to feel regardless of what's going on in the world. What we do is not based on our abilities or our talents or our skills. What we do is based on how we feel. And so you can write this down. In order to thrive in this, what you're going to have to master is how to create certain emotions inside of yourself, independent of what's going on in the external world, okay? Part of what we're trying to get you to appreciate is not to live your life in reaction like most people, but to be deliberate and mindful in terms of, this is what I am going to create for myself. That was part of the reason that in that first slide, what I wanted you to do is to decide ahead of time how this is going to be, as opposed to how just being reactive. So the environment throws this at you and you run and you react to it. And it throws something else at you and you run to react to it, and so on. And so for many of you who are in HR, if you think about one morning you go to work, and if you weren't clear about what the outcome was that you wanted for your day, what you're going to find is that you're going to be pulled into emergencies that are happening within the organization that relate to policies and practices and people. And so you would be just reacting to the environment. And at the end of the day, the feeling inside of self is going to be, what did I accomplish? And so part of the thriving in this is to come out of reaction and being more deliberate in terms of how you approach this. I think this got cut off. The last bullet says, remember, if you're feeling negative emotions, you are not at your best. So if what you're feeling in this current pandemic is stress and fear and anxiety and all of that, just know that you're not at your best, okay? So the big thing then is, so if she's saying that it's the emotions that are the fuel that drive this, then how do I create my emotions? One of the mistakes that we make is that we make the mistake that in thinking that things make us feel a particular way and people make us feel a particular way. That is not so. We create every single emotion that we experience. And there are three ingredients that we always use, regardless of whether the emotion is positive or negative. The first ingredient is, what are we doing with our body? That's physiology. The second ingredient is, what are you doing with your focus? The third ingredient is, what are the words that you're using to think in or say out aloud? And the combination of all three of these things create the emotions that you're experiencing. Now, if you create it, you can also uncreate it. So this is more of an elaboration. Physiology. How do you engage your body? What are you doing with your posture? How are you breathing? What is the tone of your voice? Are you moving? Now, embedded within this are tools to use to get yourself in a particular state. And so physiology is the easiest thing to change, especially if you are a worrier. So there are times when we get so caught up with the narratives in our mind about just how awful things are, that to tell yourself to stop is too much. But what is critical is that you have to interrupt your thought. And the easiest way to interrupt your thought is to do something with your body. So there are times when I have clients who come in who are really very, very depressed. And what I say to them, in order for them to understand this emotional triad, is I would, when they're talking about real things that are sad and distressing, and I would say to them, there are three things that we do when we feel any emotion. And even in this sadness, I want you to know that you can feel something different. And I would say, just humor me for a minute and just do what it is that I'm going to ask you to do. And I'd say, stand up. And the person would stand up. And I just say, jump up and down. They look at me crazy, and then they do it. And they're jumping up and down, and then they start laughing. Emotion is created by motion. And if you notice what happens when you're depressed, you don't want to move. Part of the reason that exercise is so critical is because it generates those elevated emotions. So remember, physiology is a really important ingredient to remember when you're trying to change how you feel, okay? Focus is the next ingredient. What we focus on, we feel, whether it's true or not. So here's the example. Were you feeling your arms before I mentioned them? Chances are you weren't. But the fact that I mentioned your arm, your attention went there. And you noticed that. It is the same thing for anything else. If you're not focused on it, you don't feel it. Now, I don't know how many of you know Anthony Robbins, the personal development guru. And he has events where there is a fire walk, and you get to walk on 6 feet of burning coal, and you don't get burned. There's no blister, you don't feel it. So I have done 3 fire walks. And because you're not focused on the hot coals and, oh my God, I'm getting burned, you literally don't feel it. So this happens on an emotional level and on a physical level. Remember this, remember what I said we have control over: what we think, what we feel, and what we do. So part of deciding what you're going to focus on is about telling your mind where you want it to go. It's kind of like a radio frequency. So I listen to Cool, and Cool comes in on 97.1. If I want to hear Cool, I can't go to 100. Cool is not going to come in. This is really important. Part of the management of this is you need to decide what you're going to focus on and not let others determine that for you. What does that mean? If you binge watch the COVID coverage, you're going to be scared. If you binge watch the news is all of what is wrong in the world. That's what you're going to feel. And so again, understand that you control one, you control two. The last one is about language. Language is about words. The words you use to describe your experience become your experience. And so part of what I want you to begin to think about is, what is my habitual language pattern? Is it that, geez, life is so hard? How come I can't get a break? Man, I am so soft. Whatever you tell the part of the mind that makes us feel, it doesn't question you, it just says, okay. And so, is this an opportunity, or is this the worst thing that could ever happen, ever? Whatever it is, whatever language you use, the biocomputer of the brain just acts on it. It doesn't question it, okay? So remember this triad. So if you think of yourself as a high-performing machine, what type of fuel are you putting in it? And I kind of like Bimmers, and they are the ultimate driving machine, and they require premium gas. And so the question to self, if you want to perform at a particular level, what emotion should be fueling you? So if you want to perform in an outstanding way, fear is not going to help you. It's like putting kerosene oil in the ultimate driving machine. It's not going to run. And so, again, as you deal with this thing that we all have to deal with, what it's saying is that you have to come at it with your greatest self. Because if you do otherwise, the uncertainty that is swirling around us is going to get the better of you and create overwhelm. So whatever you focus on, you feel. Are you focused on success? Are you focused on failure? Are you focused on joy? Are you focused on sorrow? Whatever it is, the biocomputer of the mind just says, okay. All right, so just kind of remember that. In terms of language, as soon as you put words to an experience, it changes the meaning. So somebody says to you, how are you? And you say, not bad. Versus, how are you? And you say, I'm thrilled. Versus, so-so. Versus, outstanding. And I know some people say to me, but if I don't feel good and I say thrilled, then I'm being fake. What I would say to you is that your brain responds to your words as if they're real. And what I want you to begin to do is the words have the power to change the experience that you're having, because words change our biochemistry. So saying so elicits certain neurotransmitters and hormones and all of that stuff. Saying thrilled does something else. So we have so much more control over this thing called our bodies and our minds and our emotions than we give ourselves credit for. So basically what I'm saying is that in order to thrive in this current situation that the world is in, we got to become masters at managing ourselves. We have to become masters at managing thoughts, feelings, and behavior. That's all self-management is about, okay? And to achieve self-management, this is where I think it's hard. You have to take responsibility for your thoughts, And I'm talking total responsibility now. You have to take total responsibility for your thoughts, your feelings, and your behavior. And so if I am home and I sit home and I'm thinking about COVID and I am scared, I need to understand that the only reason that I am scared is because of what I'm telling myself in my head. I then need to pause and rewind so that I can become aware of what am I telling myself. And then I can then adjust what I'm telling myself so that I can have some other options in terms of how I'm going to feel. Okay? Self-management is so important because as professionals in HR and as, you know, whatever your role is, wife, mother, sister, brother, husband, whatever your role is in this, whatever roles you have to play in this life, everybody wants and needs something from you. And if you don't take care of you first, you're not going to be very useful to anybody else. Okay? And so part of taking care of you is to begin to develop strategies and techniques to make yourself feel good, to get the right fuel going before you engage with anybody. Okay? Self-management is key. You can't leave your mind up to its own devices. When you don't tell your mind what to do, it just does this. It goes to what is wrong or what could go wrong. If you stay in what is wrong or what could go wrong, you're going to be stressed. When you're stressed, you're not performing at your optimal. Stress means you're in survival. When you're in survival, your focus becomes extremely narrow. Everything in the environment now is perceived of as a threat. And if you're surviving, you can't create, you can't expand, you can't achieve, not in the way that you want to. And so controlling your focus every single day, if this is the one thing you do, it's gonna pay dividends down the road. You must direct your focus every single day. One of the things that I've learned, didn't learn it in my formal training as a psychologist, is that you can't, the mind, in order for it to stay in a place where you feel inner peace and joy and you're productive, is that you have to direct it every day. You have to feed it every day. And it's gonna give you back what you feed it. And so it's kind of like, if you want a healthy body, if you fill it with junk food, that's not gonna happen. The same thing happens for the mind. And so you must take time before you start your day to engage your mind in a way that is about what you want and not about what you fear. You get results in advance by asking yourself daily. And it's not just asking, but you need to write this down for it to be imprinted in your neurology. What is the outcome that I want for today? The outcome is not a to-do list. It is at the end of today, what is it that I would want to be feeling? That's your outcome. And again, for those of you who drive, notice that before you got your car, you didn't notice the same model and make like yours. You got your car, and every time a car like yours passes you on the road, you notice it. When you set your outcome, literally what you're doing is that you're telling your mind, this is all I want you to pick up as I go through my day. Okay? So this is critical, critical, critical. We kind of talked about this already. Things that you control versus things that you don't. Things that are outside of your control are people's actions, their opinions, their feelings, their thoughts. Adversity, which is kind of what we're going through now. What is within your control? Your attitude, your effort, your behavior, your emotion. Being a great team player. Deciding that you're going to see what are the opportunities here. That's within your control. Okay? This is just an elaboration of that. Here are some things you can control. If others follow the rules of social distancing, this is more specific to COVID. The amount of toilet, you don't control the amount of toilet paper that's left in the store. You don't control the actions of others. We don't control how long this COVID is going to last. Here are the things you control, so that's what you focus on. What attitude are you having from day to day? Turning off the news, you have control over that. Finding fun things to do at home, you have control over that. Limiting your social media, you have control of that. How kind are you going to be in this particular environment? So these are just examples of some things we control. Now, the question I think was alluded to earlier. So we know all of this. So how is it that we get change to happen? Now, one of the things to understand about the brain and how it works is that it's repetition that is going to get you the result. Okay? So you can train your brain to use specific patterns to evaluate the environment. So if your pattern before was what is wrong, you can train yourself to notice what is right. You can begin to practice writing things down. So the way that the neurology is set up, it can't do two things at the same time. It's one or the other. Now, being grateful and thankful, what that does is that it just brings more of that into your life. When your mind is stuck on what is wrong, that energy just brings more of what is wrong in your life. So again, we get to choose, all right? Part of the choice that I am suggesting is that you can't just do it once. It means you have to repeat it over and over and over again. Think about what skillful advertisers do. KFC just does, it's not one message that you get. It's everywhere that you go, you see it. And so what's going to be important as you transform your way of looking or experiencing your world, you're going to have to remind yourself about it all the time. Because in order to rewire your brain to do the things you want it to do, is that you need to use all of your senses. So you need to see it, you need to hear it, you need to feel it, The other two senses are not that important. These three, you need to see it, you need to hear it, you need to feel it. Now, how do you get yourself in this state? Preparation is the key. And so what it's going to mean is you need to prepare every morning before you engage with anybody. You need to prepare by filling yourself up. Before you engage with anyone, you need to ensure that you're feeling those emotions that are going to make you operate at your highest level. Understand that what's going on right now is not personal. Nonetheless, you still have to plan and prepare so that you're not experiencing undue stress around you. We can talk some more about the specifics of how do you prepare. So I saw this image online, and it says, what do I want to be during COVID-19? Do you want to operate in the fear zone where you're grabbing food and you're eating even though you're not hungry, or you're forwarding all of the doom and gloom messages about COVID? Or do you want to operate in the learning zone by deciding I'm going to start to give up what I can't control, or I'm going to become aware of the situation and think how to act? Or you can operate in the growth zone by having your mind think about what are the opportunities here? I mean, how can I grow from this? And so there are lots of options. We can either grow, we can learn, or we can stay in fear. I saw this, I was taking an online course recently, and the facilitator, this was part of the homework that we needed to remember this poem. As I think, so I feel. As I feel, so I do. As I do, so I have. And if you can remember this, it is a way to take yourself out of fear and reactivity and back in control. What this pandemic has done is that it has thrown all of us into uncertainty. And therefore, in order to cope, you need to get back a sense of control. Let me skip this. Here's what I want you to challenge yourself to do in this real time of uncertainty. I want you to dare to dream while the rest of the world is panicked and thinking that this is the worst thing that could ever happen. I want you to dare to think about how can I do things differently in my life? How can I do things differently with my family, at work, at school? This stuff that I'm doing differently, how will it help me and propel me forward in terms of career, in terms of just being in the different roles that I play, in being a better mom, in being a better wife, in being a better provider? Dare to dream while the rest of the world is in panic that this thing has happened. If you do that, I guarantee you're going to come out ahead of this. You're going to thrive through this. All right, I'm going to stop talking there and see whether anybody has any questions.
Any questions? I'd seen Giovanni earlier on with a question.
Okay, Giovanni.
No, my question was just that how is it how is it that we should focus on the positive when the reality hits us? So I mean, we're hearing it and we know about what's going on, so it's kind of hard to think positive when we are have all this in front of us.
I got it. And so I think you're absolutely right, Giovanni, about when things are awful, how can you stay positive, sort of. I'm reframing this. And I would take positive out of that, and I would insert, if you focus on what you want, in spite of what's going on around you, then you're not going to stay in fear and stress and upset. So trying to tell your mind something is good when it's not good, that's not what I am proposing. What I think in terms of a direction for the mind is that if we focused on what we want, then we're not so distracted by the things that are going wrong. That's how I would respond to that.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Any other question?
Just to help it sink in. So you're saying, in other words, then, it's important to be aware of our thoughts and our feelings, and to make deliberate attempts.
Absolutely.
Even when you don't feel like it, but to make deliberate attempts.
Absolutely.
To bring to focus the opposite of that feeling.
What you want, not so much the opposite, but to remember all the time, to challenge yourself to focus on what you want.
Okay.
So for example, if you're a student and you're in traffic at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, and so you're taking your online class while in your car, you have to remember that you are doing a master's program. There are billions of people who want to be studying and they're not. And just focus on the end game. You know, the fact is you're just going to be one course closer to having your master's, and just focus on that.
So I like that example, Ollie. So it is kind of, in any situation, we have options in terms of what we're gonna focus on. And so if after work you're driving home and you're trying to connect to this online class, if you tell your mind is that, gee, this is too much, the mind is gonna say, okay. And then you're gonna feel the stress of that. If you tell your mind something else, that, all right, listening to this on the way home is gonna, at least I'm gonna be able to focus I'm not gonna be interrupted by so and so and so. I am gonna take in as much as I can. And then when I get home, or it's gonna be recorded and I can come back and listen to it at another time. I would imagine that if you're in traffic and you're feeling the stress of driving in Jamaica and people cutting you off, and it's after 8 or 9 hours of people just pulling you in all different directions, what I would say is it's going to be important to have compassion for yourself and to you know what, today was a doozy. I just got beat up so hard. And if it feels like listening to a class at that time is too much, then what it might mean in terms of self-care is instead of pushing through it and getting more frustrated because you're not taking it in, what might be more useful in that situation is to get centered and calm first. So remember what I was saying, that the emotions are the fuel. So if the emotion in that particular time, driving home in traffic, is one of stress, you're not going to be able to learn. And so it might be kinder to self to kind of know that the stuff is going to be recorded and go listen to it at another time, and spend the time just getting yourself back centered. Turn on some music, blast it. It makes more sense to get you back in a good mood than to try and push through something when you're feeling lousy. Because that's going to increase your frustration, because you're doing something and it's not working. You're trying to listen and you're not learning. And so this is the importance of just listening to yourself and understanding, all right, when do I need to rest? And when do I need to pick it up again? One of the things that I know in terms of how to best set yourself up to manage all of the things that are going to be thrown at you during the day is that you need to take care of yourself before you leave your house. You need to take care of you before you engage with the children. If, for those of you who have kids, before you engage with your husband or your wife, you need to center and take care of yourself first. Because if not, you're going to be reactive to the environment. And that is what is going to drive your stress. When you're stressed, you're not learning like you could. And it's going to make things worse. So the first thing is getting yourself centered and at a place where you're calm and it's inner peace. Getting yourself to a place where you're feeling good. One of the things that I've started doing since COVID is that because the mind doesn't know the difference between pretend and for real, or it doesn't know the difference between a thought and an experience, what I do in the morning in terms of setting the intention, like I'm telling you, is that when I ask myself, what is the outcome that I want for my day? In this COVID time, what I want is laughter and playfulness. And so what I'm writing in the morning is, thank you for laughter. Thank you for playfulness. I want those emotions because I think that they're the fuel that are gonna create the stuff that I need to navigate all of this and to help others to navigate it. And so for many of you who are in HR, you're not just dealing with your stuff, you're dealing with other people's stuff. And so it's even more important for you to be okay. It's even more important for your cup to be full, because you're going to have to be pouring from it throughout the day. That was a long response. Okay,
I think what
questions?
you're also saying too is that we have to be able to ask for help.
Yes.
Sort of pride and those sorts of things have to
Right.
stop those things.
Right. And so it's about having compassion for self and knowing when, okay, I need some support here. Planning, and although this hasn't come up, some of the things that come up for people who have children and the children are home is, how do I navigate this? How do I juggle all of this? And what's going to be important is to come up with, you still need a schedule and you still need structure. And I'm not sure how many of you are working from home or how many of you still have to go into the office. Whatever the situation is, on the home front, there still needs to be a structure in terms of how things are gonna unfold, and how you're gonna help to organize the children so that they don't feel the anxiety and start acting up even more to make it even more stressful for you. Any other questions?
Now's your time, people.
Okay.
I'm good. Just to say real positive stuff, real good stuff.
Thank you. All right, guys. You can let me. I'll send this to Olivine, and if you want the presentation, she can share it with you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Doc. And Trisha has a raised hand. Oh, sorry, Trisha. Sorry, Trisha had a raised hand. Trisha Dehaney, one of our lecturers.
Hi, Trisha.
Hi everyone. Hi, Olivine. Hi, Miss Johnson, and hi, everyone. And first off, let me say thank you very much. I came in a little late, and I have to also be kind to myself right now to say
yes.
I missed some, but what I got was enough. And to share two things that are in line with what you have shared. I have a 6-year-old daughter, and I had to take her to the doctor because she kept complaining about stomach pains. And when I brought her, after a few nights, the doctor explained that I need to limit what I say about COVID around her and how much of it she watches. Right. And he said he suspected that she was having some anxieties. And I'm like, anxiety? She's sick. What kind of anxiety is she having, right?
No.
And
right?
And I took that and I minimized it, and I can tell you that in about 2 days she did not complain about any tummy aches and headaches again at nights. And I'm saying this because as a parent, the fact is, the truth is, there is a lot that's on our plates. Persons wear many hats, and one of those hats is just being a parent. And you sometimes are not sure how much to share, how much to not share, and just to find that balance. And so just being mindful also that just as how we're being impacted emotionally by this, that our children are being, and all of this information that you shared with us just now, we can also use it as we maneuver with our kids. And lastly, I stopped at a place this evening, and the lady who was working in the store, she was very angry. And I said to her, "Why are you so angry?" She said, "My supervisor told me to do X, Y, and Z." And I explained to him that I'm not feeling so well and I can't do it right now. And the supervisor started to argue with her to say, "Oh, you mean you're tired? You can't tired because I've been doing more than you. You're not tired." Wow. And she was saying to herself, "You can't tell me how I feel. You don't live within me. You don't know how I feel." And she was on, and I said to her, I said, what's wrong? And she was just explaining, and it hit home to me that sometimes we don't recognize that we are all different. I can carry maybe 1,000 kilograms and I'm good. Somebody else maybe can just carry 100. Right. And to just recognize that though I can carry 1,000, somebody else may not be able to do so. And to know that it is okay. And also, if it is a reverse and I can only take 100 and somebody's taking 1,000, to just realize that I am doing the best that I can. I can only take 100 right now, and that is okay. Right. So, each morning I usually say to myself, what are the things that I must do today that would make today meaningful and worthwhile? I recognize I can't do everything I'd love to do, but tonight when my head hits the pillow, What are maybe those 2, 3 big ticket items that if I would have done those, I can say that my day was well lived. Because
Absolutely.
the truth is,
Yeah.
we will not be able to do it all. And we have to know what are those things that it will be okay if it falls by the wayside. And I'm not talking about being mediocrity or anything like that, but just to be okay if some things fall by the wayside. And lastly, to communicate. Communicate with the persons around you. If you're in a space at home with your family and you feel very stressed and you maybe just want a little time by yourself, say it. I even say to my 6-year-old, sometimes she's at me, you know, they talk a lot like me, like I'm chatting a lot, right? And I would say, Abri, mommy is just really tired right now. Mommy's just really feeling a little frustrated right now. And mommy needs a timeout, you know, because sometimes also we act without communicating. And when we don't communicate, then we leave persons to be, you know, wondering what's up with you, you know, and people cannot answer those questions. So if you're driving home and you feel like you cannot manage the class or whatever, you reach out to a lecturer, you know, I've been really stressed, blah, blah, blah. If you're home with your family, your spouse, hubby, you know, I'm just really so tired right now and I just feel like I want 20 minutes to myself. And just have that communication with the family and just to know that it is okay, you know?
Absolutely.
And that's my 2 cents. But thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tricia. Yes. Excellent, excellent advice. Excellent advice. And, you know, children sense us. So there's an energy that we all give off when we're feeling a particular thing. And so you don't have to say that you're stressed for the people around you to feel it, you know, and I'm sure you've experienced that. So somebody doesn't have to say anything to you, you sense it. And children are really very good at sensing. So anything you are going through, they feel it and feed off of it. And that's kind of why when it feels like you're at your most stress that they act up, it's because they're feeling your stress. Thanks, Tricia. All right, any other questions? Any other questions? So part of the management of this is to just know, go ahead.
Johnson, as students and lecturers leave here, we have heard what you have said, providing a very positive emotion. But how do we maintain, how our students, how our lecturers maintain this attitude, this positive attitude, so that the attitude becomes a real part of us, not just for now, but for us for some time to come?
Got it. And so, excellent question. How you make something a habit is repetition. And so it is to ask yourself a question and then do it. What would I need to do beginning right now that will make me feel excited? What would I need to do right now to make me feel joy? And the answers are inside of all of us. And so this is an example. So you go to the source of the answer, which is self. You have an idea of what you want. What is it that I want? I want inner peace in this time of uncertainty. And so the question would be, what would I have to do in order to have inner peace? Your mind is going to respond and give you the answer. So for me, that answer is this, and it's things to do. So it is meditating. It's waking up early so I can get these things in. Meditate. And what I do would be, it's different for everybody. meditate for 25 minutes, spiritually connect for 30 minutes, exercise for 45 minutes, journal for about 10. And I do this every single day because that's what keeps my mind focused on what I want. So keeping the mind in a state of productivity and optimism, it requires feeding every single day. And so different people are at different stages. And so, for example, if one of the things somebody wants to do is to improve their feeling of confidence, you can't just think in your head, I want to be confident. One of the things that you can do to rewire the brain is every single morning, many times throughout the day, is to repeat, I am confident. I am. It doesn't matter that you don't believe it initially. Repetition is what changes a habit. So it's like any other thing that we do in our life. When we want mastery over something, we have to do it over and over and over and over and over again. And so if you leave here and not do anything, then nothing is going to change for you. If you leave here and decide that, you know what, I'm just going to work on one thing. If it is that you have a fear about a specific thing, so I have a fear that I am gonna fail my exam, I'm just making up stuff, then reprogramming, literally saying to yourself, writing this down every day, I am doing the best I can. I am doing the best I can. I am learning whatever it is. So whatever you want, the more you're able to say it, think it, write it, the more it's going to become a part of you. And then it's your automatic. You don't have to think about it anymore. It will just be you. And so if you do nothing, then nothing is going to change. But if you want things to change, the first thing is know what it is that you want. Know why it is that you want it. And then take action so that you can get it. So we don't get results if all we're doing is thinking. The only thing that gets results is action. So we have to do. I hope that answers the question.
Great, great, great. I think you're telling us that really we need to have our tools in place. And
yes.
Those tools will help us to be able to repeat.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Great.
One of the things too is also striving, because Trisha has made a point here. I try to use generative language that helps me see the possibilities of the future. I often fail to keep at it. But I keep at it as it works wonders. And I'm thinking that, you know, this thing about perfect practice makes perfect. So you keep trying, even like you fall off your diet, but as long as you keep trending in the right direction, you'll ultimately do it, you know?
Right, right.
And of course, Trisha also said we have to learn to say no. No is a legitimate word in English, and it's the shortest sentence ever. If we can't manage something, say no.
Right. Right. So that sort of got me thinking. I don't know if there's anybody who has something that they would like some input in resolving. You know, this also could be part of the Q&A. It doesn't have to necessarily be about COVID. You know, that the idea of saying no triggered that question in my mind, all of these. A lot of times there are multiple things that are being thrown at you, and the question is, how do I decide what it is that I am supposed to work on? And again, if you're not clear about what your outcome is before you leave home, then, and you're the type of person who has a challenge with saying no, by the time you come home, you're going to be beat up, because it's going to be, this person is wanting this and you're going to jump, and that person wants it and you're going to jump, and that person. And so it's kind of like a ping pong ball. And I'm not sure if anybody who is in here, you know, if that is an issue. But there are lots of levels to, you know, how do I manage me so that the environment doesn't manage me?
You're actually asking for a volunteer for an exercise now, Doc?
It's just something to think about, because I noticed that a lot of people didn't have questions, but so I just kind of broadened it to say, you know, the questions don't just have to be about what we're talking about. It could be about, you know, broader general things.
Yes.
It's me again, Trisha, Dr. Johnson. No, I don't have a question, but as regards to no, it took me a long time to say no and to be okay with it. Right. You know, when you hear about, you know, caring and this and that, we often tend to think, and I from my socialization, well, anyway, that you care more about others if you're not careful than you do yourself, and that if you say no to someone because you're going to put yourself first, then something is wrong with that. And it has taken me some while to recognize that it is okay. It is okay in this time and this space to say no. Granted, there are limitations, right? Because we are not all completely independent as students, and even us as lecturers. And as you say, we have to keep at the fore of our minds, what is it that we want to achieve? And we have to say yes and to say no to certain things that will help us to make, you know, to achieve those things. And bearing in mind that everything will have consequence. But just saying no, for example, if somebody needs help, but you're in the middle of doing something on your own and you're like, okay, can I take this on? And sometimes you're so stretched. But then it becomes a little bit more difficult in the work environment. And if your desk is high and your director comes or your manager comes and here's another task, it's another task because the place is on fire, we need to put it out. How do you say, how do you have that conversation? And it's not just saying no also, but how do you have a conversation around that? And I find that sometimes we're crippled by fear, especially sometimes in the work environment. I can't, this is my manager, you know, you're at school, you know, I can't, but, and so sometimes we don't see what options there are. We don't engage in a conversation because we don't feel like we have the power, the right to. It's almost like sometimes we see only limitations, and then we are blinded by those limitations and we don't see what else is possibly in the situation.
True.
And I speak so passionately about it because that has been so much a part of my journey. And, you know, I've kind of grown out of it to recognize that oftentimes I am seeing only limitations. And if I just step back a little, I can recognize that there are many possibilities outside of those. And there comes back to what you were talking about, retraining our minds and to start thinking about things differently.
You're absolutely right. And the idea about how to navigate when the emergencies come up, and what I would add to what you're saying, Tricia, is to recognize the expectations that you have for yourself, that we have for ourselves. And so the illusion of multitasking is truly an illusion. And so it's important to understand that the way that the brain works is that it can do one thing at a time. It can do things in sequence. But to think that you can do 10 things all at once, that is a recipe for stress. And so, because you understand that you can only do one thing at a time, if you get interrupted with, well, I need this done right away, I think that there's nothing wrong with that. It's important, though, for you to state and make it clear to whoever it is that is making the request that, all right, I'm gonna stop X. I'm gonna put X on hold because you need A right away. And I want you to know that the deadline for X can't be the deadline that we have said before, because I am going to now work on A. Oftentimes what I think people do in their minds is that they get additional things and then they still think that the old expectations should still apply. And so part of the management of the juggling of all of this is to understand that with each new thing, there has to be a readjustment in terms of expectation, or you're going to drive yourself crazy with stress. And it's managing your expectations of yourself, as well as managing the expectations of the boss, your lecturers, or the kids, or your significant other. Okay. All right. Anything else?
Dr. Johnson?
Yes.
Hello. This is Tashana. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Oh, I just want to ask you a quick question, because I know you said you must try to get control of yourself by doing certain things, by doing certain routine, which I am trying, but I still feel a little bit daunting. I must say this is one of my best weeks. Best week. And
nice.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
But, okay. Thank you. With work, family, and school. So for me, I have to focus on saying, okay, it's my last semester and I want to finish. But it's really hard. It's like going to bed with all the assignments on my mind, can't sleep properly, and then waking up with all the assignments on my mind as well.
Wow.
And okay, I'm going to focus on this one, but while I'm doing this one, it's like I'm worried about the next one. So right now, that is my biggest challenge. I'm trying to cope with all of this that is happening.
Okay.
So I'd love your advice for that.
So what I would say is, what you're going to be trying to push through and make yourself stress and worry about an assignment in my mind, is just going to make things worse. So when you find yourself at a place where you're tired and there is no more fuel in the tank, what's going to be important for you is to, whatever ritual you have, you have to get yourself back refreshed and recharged, because trying to run on empty is just going to make the stress that you're feeling worse. And so understand that if you are rested, both mentally and physically, you're going to get more out of 30 minutes of studying than if you try to push through on empty and put in 2 hours.
Okay.
And so what I would suggest to you is that when you find yourself feeling that what you just described to me, it is not the time to push. It is the time to sit and exhale and recharge and reset.
Okay.
So you know what it is that you're supposed to do, and that is fantastic. It's important for you to understand that you also need to understand when to rest. Now, I just thought of this. I don't know if you would want it. So in addition to everything else that I do, I am a hypnotherapist, and I have a hypnosis recording that I call stress management. And what it does is that it helps regardless of what the day has been. At night, it helps the mind to come back down, because it takes you through a series of things to get you back centered. Now, if you would like, I can send you a recording of it. And so what you do, if you feel like that, is that you just sit and listen. It's about 20 minutes.
Okay.
And what it will do is mentally recharge you. It will help you to mentally release some of what you're describing.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Johnson.
All right.
I was also thinking that on a practical level also, if you go to HRD TV, our YouTube channel, we have a survival kit playlist that is several of our orientation sessions. And in some of them, we spoke about time management and study techniques. So we have several videos there because we did several years of our orientation. So you can pick those out and have a look at them. That's a practical thing as well.
Okay. And just to add to that, as you listen to the time management stuff, one of the things I want you to notice is that time management is really self-management. Is how am I going to manage the 10 hours or the 12 hours of awake time that I have? And so one of the things you're going to notice is that the more you manage yourself, the more it's going to feel like you've managed time, because time is a feeling. It's not we all get 24 hours, and what we feel in terms of our productivity is about how well we have managed ourselves. All right. Any other questions?
Dr. Johnson, good evening, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening.
I wanted to find out that recording that you mentioned earlier to Tasharna, if that could be available to everybody else, including myself.
So this, it could be, but because it's huge, the way that it's stored is as a Google Drive, and so. Okay. I get to share it, but I get to share it. I have to share it to an email. So I don't think that if I forwarded it to, say, Olivine, if she forwarded, we could try that and see if it works.
What I can do, I can give you the email addresses of the people who are desperate for this.
Okay.
Would that help? Yeah, I can give you email addresses. I myself would like to listen to that. I can tell you.
All right. Okay. So I can do that. I can do that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. All righty, guys. Well, thank you for your time. This is, we're living in unprecedented times. There's a part of it that I like. There's a part of it that the uncertainty of it makes me a little uncomfortable. What I'm choosing to focus on, though, I mean, since I've started giving thanks for laughter and playfulness, what I've found is that I have the energy to kind of do the things that I need to do. Prior to that, I was just kind of vegging out, and there was work to be done and I was doing nothing, you know. And so what I have discovered is just having certain type of emotion driving me allows me to get the things that I need to do done. And so all the best. We are going to get through this, and we get to decide when it's over. I mean, what is it that we are gonna add to our lives and the lives of others? All righty. Nighty night. Go have a wonderful evening. And for those of you who need to rest, please go do that. All righty.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Join me, the HRD. Thank you so much, Doc. Thank you so much.
You're
This
welcome.
has been wonderful.
Thank
Very
you.
helpful. And I'm seeing so many people sending me their email addresses because they would like me to forward it to you. Right? So,
okay. All righty. All righty. All right.
All right. And thank you, everybody. And thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you, Olivine, for organizing this. Thanks a lot.
All right. Walk good, everybody. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.